Welcome to the 34th edition of the Loane Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about a blue liner who was drafted by the Tampa Bay Lightning, second overall in 2009. He's been one of the most prestigious defensemen in the last decade and has continued to dominate the offensive blue line. That is Victor Hedman. Now, when talking about Victor Hedman, you're talking about an elite offensive defenseman, a guy in his prime who was an elite shutdown player, but his defensive impact and value has actually gone down the last few years compared to his previous seasons and his younger years, where he was an elite two-way defenseman and he was very elite at being able to shut down guys and being able to utilize different angles and gaps to be able to close situations and being able to stifle situations defensively as well. When you're talking about Victor Hedman, you're talking about a guy who could headman the offensive blue line really well. Obviously, he has effortless movement given the fact that he's 6'6" and he can move really well. He can move very fluidly and he can move with precision and accuracy. So, in terms of the footwork and the ability to not necessarily accelerate, but be fluid within his feet, he was a guy who could really separate from contact so effortlessly compared to other defensemen and compared to other players in this league. And obviously, he has those longer strides, that longer lower body, and longer radius to be able to get different touch points in regards to his skating and be able to maneuver so effortlessly at the same time. And then you look at the makeup of his puck skills and his dynamic shot threat game and playmaking game that allows him to be able to control the blue line as well. In the back half of his seasons and the back half of his years in the NHL, he's continued to get better at actually being able to utilize deception as well. And obviously, like we mentioned, 6'6". Sometimes players at the size of a more difficult time compared to smaller guys at being able to maneuver, being able to utilize their coordination because it can be a little bit tricky based on the limbs and their longer limbs to be able to control their coordination and control their brain sometimes. But with Victor Hedman, you're obviously getting a dominant defenseman who understands not only on how to utilize his limbs and longer limbs, but he understands the coordination aspects. So he links together the coordination with his brain and his offensive IQ. So you're getting a player who's very well rounded in that sense, that part of the offensive zone, and how he understands translatable play within the offensive zone. Obviously, elite at head manning the point, and he's really elite when it comes to making sure and understanding how to utilize his vision. And he's really elite when it comes to this. Maintaining that heads up awareness is really important as a defenseman when manning the offensive blue line because for a defenseman, if they're keeping their head down, sometimes they're not scanning all the way through and that scanning and that they're not going to be able to identify potential opportunities, not only scan plays east west when they maneuver with the puck moving laterally, but also they might not be able to have the chance to see pucks go through on net and potential opportunities for shot lanes as well. So the makeup of Hedman's game is largely based on shooting, and he obviously has very large impact and a sustained amount of impact as a finisher as well, which is really intriguing because he's a really good shot threat, but he's really good with his one timer. He's really good and really accurate with how he can shoot the puck. And he shoots the puck sometimes like a power forward style player, especially as a defenseman. It's a really key element to have because being able to shoot high is an advantage because that gives an advantage at the net front where players can tip those pucks and have the opportunity to tip those pucks. Whereas if a defenseman is shooting low all the time, it can be challenging for those players at the net front to try and engage the puck and try to engage tip shots and stuff like that. So with Hedman, you're getting a guy who can shoot in a lot of different ways as well. He can shoot high, he can shoot low, he can shoot mid, he can shoot from many different ranges of space. He can shoot from anywhere in the zone. He can shoot from any angle. He's a guy who's very versatile in terms of his shooting impact and his actual finishing impact, which is really intriguing when you look at his game and how much sustained offense he can generate. Obviously, his expected goal numbers are interesting because I saw some statistics where sometimes the Lightning were actually better at 5-on-5 without him in terms of actual expected goal output compared to, and this is more relative to recent years where Hedman's, you see some of those numbers drop a little bit, but the offensive touch and value is what you're getting the most out of and what you want to get out of a defenseman like him because obviously he's getting a little bit older now, but at the same time, you still want to get as many good offensive years out of him as you can and still be able to find ways to utilize that to the best of his ability. So with Hedman, if you're still getting at least an elite offensive defenseman, that's still really good. Even if he's still aging and getting older, that's a really good sign that he's still showcasing his talent and being consistent within the league as well. And the other thing with him is obviously he has value at both 5-on-5 situations, 5v4 situations, but also 4v5 situations where he can be a shutdown player as part of the PK. He's still a staple on the PK. He's not necessarily as great in terms of even strength offense when you're looking at actual defensive value and numbers there. But when you're looking at his PK setting situations and how well he still shuts down guys on the penalty kill, you're still getting a lot of defensive value from him there, which adds to his wins above replacement value. And it's very important for him to be able to have that sustained impact on the PK because he's needed on the PK. He's a guy who can be really relied upon in so many different situations. And obviously, the Lightning, they lost Mikhail Sergachev this offseason, but they're still getting Ryan McDonagh back. He can still kill penalties and play that role with Hedman if needed. So you're getting a guy with Hedman who can kill penalties. He's still active and boxing guys out, turning angles down, using his stick on the PK, he's still and his defensive value is large in part due to the PK settings. And what's also interesting about Hedman's game is he's still continued to play a lot of great competition. Even as he's gotten older, he's still maintained that consistency element with how much quality competition that he faces. And that's a big component to analyzing an elite defenseman is having those matchups because coaches who can rely on those types of players consistently 25, 30 minutes plus a game can allow those and those players can really to allow themselves to take over within the game. That's very important when talking about Hedman's game is his ability to be consistent within his matchups and how consistent he is when matching up against guys. The the actual value they can get out of shutting those guys down. Obviously, we mentioned PK situations where you can shut top units down and stuff like that. So that adds value to the quality of the competition he's facing because more likely than not, he's going to be matched up against top lines, top pairs, whatever it may be in terms of power plays. And so it's very important for him to have that sustained impact. His power play impacts slightly dropped the last few years as well, slightly, but in terms of even strength offense and goals output and ability to generate playmaking within the offensive zone in terms of primary assist production and stuff like that, you're still getting a quality player all around in that sense. So you're still getting a quality playmaker, which is really good to see with Hedman and how well he's able to translate that to many different parts of the offensive zone. He's still really crisp as a passer. What I really like about his passing is how detailed he is in his passing. And obviously, we mentioned the heads up awareness that he has within his game to be able to maintain possession, be able to make crisp passes, and be able to understand how to find passing seams that other defensemen wouldn't usually go for. And Hedman's really intriguing when it comes to being able to utilize puck management, being able to utilize it in a very efficient way. And he's still really good at doing that. He's still elite at doing it. What I also really like about him, we mentioned how tall he is, his 6'6" frame, how he's able to control dynamic posture, like the posture elements within his lower body, to be able to maintain control over the puck and utilize puck positioning at the same time. So linking those two together without losing speed. That's sometimes hard to do because players can usually do one or the other, but they can't necessarily link together both. That's why one of the reasons why Hedman is so elite at what he's been doing over the years in the NHL because he understands those different attributes. He understands how to be a threat when he's maneuvering with his posture elements and using a wider lower base and using depth to his puck positioning at the same time as well to be able to maneuver around defensemen and maintain his cruising speed as well. So with Hedman, he's a guy in terms of puck positioning, he's really hard to knock off the puck in general because he has a larger range to be able to protect the puck in space and he understands body positioning. He's really got a strong center of gravity as well, so that really helps as well. His heads up awareness is another advantage, and he understands with poise how to make the next play. He's never too rattled out there, and that's a big thing that allows him to control the game at all different moments because of his mental impact and how well he can maintain that calmness, that poise So he's really underrated. He's really impactful when it comes to that on a consistent basis, and the focus he has to be able to shut guys down defensively and lock down his angles. But you're looking at an overall defenseman who could still play the game really well. He just got extended very recently within the last month to a new extension, new contract extension as well. So now you're getting a player who's going to be in Tampa Bay for it seems like most, if not all, of his career. And he's still a number one defenseman who can play all situations and he can play those big minutes for any team. And obviously, he's been a key staple to the Lightning's blue line ever since he was drafted by them back in 2009.